Is car design in general moving in the right direction? The answer to that question is no, because with every single 90% of new cars that comes out, the old one for me is always going to be the preferred one, and that goes for this new CLA shooting brake. I mean, there is something off with these proportions, and we're going to compare it to the old one. And you might say that I'm stuck in my old ways and you should appreciate new cars more, but the fact is, a car is either beautiful or it's not, and everything is subjective, obviously. But for me, these new interiors that we have, these new type of exterior styling is just not my type of style that I want to see in car designs. So we're gonna have a look at this, compare it to the old one. But before we do that, let's have a look at this article from Car Scoops. The link down below. The spec and tech of this new electrified CLA wagon. With stars in the roof. So both electric models have an 85 kilowatt hour battery supporting 320 kilowatt DC fast charging, mild hybrids to follow pretty soon. This new model is slightly larger than the outgoing CLA shooting brake and should cost more. That is also a direction I want to see switch. I don't want to see every single new car just grow in size and grow in price. Remove some of this technology that we have in cars today that we not 100% of people don't need. I just want to have, like, if there were a company today that created a brand new car company and they just did as much as possible, as mechanically as possible, while still, of course, adhering to all the new regulation we've had the last 20 years or so, that would be a company I would be very, very interested in. Because I think today cars there's too much technology, and we lost this connection with the car itself, the personality of the car, because the personality has been tainted behind this layer of pixels these days and wires. So the original CLA shooting brake was one of the best looking cars in Mercedes-Benz range, but this new model can't quite match in its visual stakes. The roof has been extended, obviously, as being a wagon, and includes a full panoramic glass roof, while found at the rear are LED taillights connected by, you guessed it, a light bar. So compared to the old CLA shooting brake, the new one is 1.37 inches longer, 1 inch wider, and 1 inch taller. The wheelbase is 2.4 inches longer, so everything grew on in every single dimension. Can we start shrinking cars back down? That is one of the reasons why I love a Mazda MX-5 or the Miata, because what Mazda is down there is something that I don't think any other car company has done. They actually reduced the weight with the ND compared to the NC, and it's still the same footprint as the original NA Miata, and that is something we just don't see today, and that is why it has such a cult following, because it still has the original idea of what Mazda wanted to do with the Miata, but that's a totally different story. So you have heat insulating safety glass in the roof with the infrared reflecting and low emissivity coating on the inside. The glass also includes 158 stars that can be illuminated. So it's not enough to have a star in the headlights or 150 stars in the grille. Now you also have 158 stars in the ceiling, which is fantastic. So the base of the electric range is CLA 250 Plus shooting brake with EQ technology. This is something Mercedes has changed recently. They don't have the EQ lineup anymore. They just call their EVs, for example, E-Class with EQ technology and so on. And then you have the CLA 350 4MATIC. Both of them have the same battery pack, 85 kilowatt hours. CLA 250 Plus is capped at 268 horsepower, 247 pound-feet of torque. This is something I really like to see. It's not an EV with 1,000 horsepower just because they can put that much power in electric power. Instead, these are reasonable numbers. I like to see it, to be honest. I think this horsepower numbers that we have in EVs today is starting to get a little ridiculous, because you can only use so much power. You have 4 contact points with the road, which are the tires, very small point of contact. So how are you going to put 2,000 horsepower down anyway? You're just going to spin the tires, or the traction control is going to come off. So I mean, this looks good to me. You have this CLA 350, 350 horsepower, 380 pound-feet of torque. That probably the one that I personally would go with. It can go 0 to 60. The base one is 6.8 and the faster one in 5 seconds. Top speed for both 131 or 2 miles per hour or 210 kilometers per hour. The cabin of the new shooting brake is mostly identical to the sedan, which is a shame. I could not have agreed more with that. This means, I know this might sound like a very negative video, but this is just what I feel about new cars today. Exterior design, interior design, there's not a lot of things that I think a new car comes out and I think this right here is a piece of art. It's very, very rare. I can't remember last time. Maybe Genesis, the G90, one of the most beautiful sedans out there. But here you can see the interior. It looks pretty much identical to the, here are stars in the ceiling as well. You can see them right here. Identical to what we have in the sedan version of the CLA. I mean, it's just a big screen. They say here that means it has the same uninspired dashboard that's dominated by a single flat screen that can house as many as 3 screens if you option it with the super screen. So very, very interesting solution for interior designs these days. But we already know that. We talked about that so many times before. Just keep repeating myself, I feel, when new cars comes out. So let's have a look at this comparison here, because are we heading in the right direction? You tell me when you look at these two cars. If you look at the design of both cars, which one do you think is the most beautiful to look at, and which one would you want to spend the most time in looking at these interiors down here? Now, looking at the new one right here, I did a redesign of this. I don't like that we have, the problem I have with this is usually we have a separation right here. We have the top graphics, talked about this again a lot before, and we have the lower graphics down here. Now we have a zigzag pattern. We have something going like this into the 3 levels. So we have one top piece for the headlights, then a middle piece for the grille, and a lower piece for the intakes in the lower section. This grille is floating right dead center between these 2 key levels that I want to see in the front end design. It creates a very messy looking front end, and I'm not a fan of the organic, usually I like organic shapes, but in this case this looks like the headlight unit and the light bar here in the middle, it looks like a rubber band that someone is stretching out. So you have someone grabbing the headlights and just stretching it out, and it becomes thinner and thinner here in the middle. It looks like it's about to snap right there in the middle. Now, looking at the old one, this is what it should have looked like. Here we do have a separation. It's not as clear as older cars, but we still have it right here. Top half graphics. If I can get this line right, what's going on here? Up top here, and then we have the lower half graphics in the bottom. Yes, these intakes intrude a little bit on this, but not as bad as we have in the new CLA, and we have more vertical lines, horizontal lines right here for the intakes, looking very, very clean, typical AMG style, and the headlights much more beautiful looking than what we have in the new one. And I would 100% choose the front end of the old one over the new one because it's just a much more beautiful design to me. I want to hear your opinions. Do you think I'm totally wrong here? Or do you think I maybe have a point with new cars coming out? And looking at the side view, these proportions of the new one, Mercedes said they were moving away from this beam design. But honestly, when I look at this, it still has a pretty clear bean shape to it. Specifically, if we draw a line right here over the greenhouse into the rear end, and then it's almost like one single curvature in the back. It has a very strange proportions right here, but I do like the line flow that we have in the middle, because we have this line, beautiful line that connects a little bit here in the rear end, and we have shoulder lines, one here over the rear axle, then we have the front one connecting to the corner of the headlight. That is beautiful, and this also connects to the corner of the taillight right there. And as in Mercedes true fashion, they always have to add this fake, I do believe it's fake in this one, this cut in the rear end. I don't understand why Mercedes insists on putting this design on every single vehicle that they put out. And you can see the wheel design again being black, trend of the last 3 years. I want to see that be switched out, even though if you look at the old wheels here, these AMG wheels, the black ones, with the silver outline. These are the ones I definitely prefer again. And looking at the design for both of these, you can see that it's not as rounded in the back like we have in the new CLA. This is a beautiful looking wagon design, small little wagon from Mercedes, has more of a defined rear end and doesn't have this weird curvature like diaper back in the rear end. And then we also have this line still intact in the old one, cutting in here and connecting to the bumper. These wheels, always been a fan of these ever since they came out on, I do believe, the C63 AMG in 2016 or something like that. Now looking at the rear end, of course, I'm a huge fan of wagons. Growing up in Sweden, we had Saab 9.5, Saab, yeah, I think that was actually, the 9.3 did not come in a wagon. We have the Volvo 740s, the 945s, 855, V70s, V90s, all of these cars in Sweden. So I like wagons. I want to see more wagons here. So I'm glad these are actually coming, first of all, to the United States. That is also a good deal. But you can see just how sloping this rear end is. If we draw a line here, it goes up something like this into the roof line and then continues in a one single curve into the A-pillar and down here. But I do definitely prefer the rear end better than I do the front end, even though we still have the rubber band design in the rear. Even though it's not as thin in the middle as it is in the front end, it still feels like someone is pulling these two pieces outwards, and it stretches the center portion, and it's about to snap right there in the middle. The wheel design, I mean, I don't know if I don't prefer these, but they're not ugly wheels, but I do wish they were silver, even though, yes, I still prefer the previous generation up here. Now, looking at the old one, this being the AMG model, I mean, there is no comparison between these two, which one is the most the coolest looking design. The old one is such a better looking vehicle. It has a lot more defined details in the rear. I love that this line wraps around the entire car. You can see that it goes into the side view here, and we don't have a weird light bar that feels too organic and too rounded like this EQ styling. Instead, we have clearly defined taillights here with some beautiful dynamic inserts for the LED right here, and we also don't have this interesting curvature that like we have in the current one. It feels like we have almost like a shelf in this area, something that I wanted to see in the new one, but instead it's just a ski slope right here all the way down. And this being the AMG, this does a lot to the design. Just having quad tailpipes in the lower section just adds so much to this design. And the wheel design when it's rolling like this, it's a beautiful looking small little wagon. Very, very tight greenhouse here as well. It slopes down, but not in this EQ way like we have here. Now look, comparing the two, the sedan and the shooting brake, 100% the sedan looks much better. It feels like a much more natural design for the CLA, even though this front end is, again, not something that I personally am a huge fan of. Now, last but not least, these interiors. I'm going to ask you once more, if you were to drive cross-country, whichever country you live in, which one would you want to sit in? This one, the old one to the right, or the new one to the left right here? You might like having screens lit up in your face while you're driving at night, making your eyes red because you can't get away from screens these days. We do have two screens on the old one as well, but they're not this hyper screen. And we also have in the old one the physical knobs and buttons. It's still a mystery to me why companies are removing this piece. It just does. It's one of these things that does zero sense to me. Also, like the old steering wheel looks better than the new one right here, this being the AMG steering wheel. I mean, look at the quality here, this metal finish that we have on the spokes, AMG down here. It's a beautiful looking steering wheel, Alcantara with a flat bottom as well, and these vents look very nice as well. I do think we have similar vents here on the side, you can see them right there, but this entire panel, very, very extremely lazy design. How much time do you think the interior designers spent designing this? All you got to do is just sketch up something like this, boom, and call it a day. This is my interior design. Let's put this screen and then hand it over to the software engineers to figure out what is actually going to be inside of these screens, compared to this one where you have all these small beautiful details in the buttons and also down here in the steering wheel. There's a lot to be designed thoughtfully with these type of older interiors, and that is where I think the design of interiors specifically is becoming way too lazy, and I want to go back to a more classy interior. But you already heard this 1,000 times here on the channel, and the same goes for the new CLA.